welcome to the Speaking Podcast. You can find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. We're also on BitChute and YouTube at Speaking Podcast. I also have the Awakening Podcast, the Learn Polish Podcast, the Meditation Podcast, and the Crypto Podcast, and all can be found on roycollin.com. Today, my guest, even though he's in Australia, he's not Australian. Please welcome Eric Winters.
Roy, thank you for having me on the show. It's true, I'm not Australian. Hang on. I do have an Australian passport, so I'm now entitled to call myself Australian, but I seldom do. Yeah, but once you're from England and you've grown up there, it's kind of in the bones, Roy.
Definitely. So you might tell the audience, who's Eric?
Who is Eric? Well, okay, for the purposes of this podcast, Eric is a self-leadership coach, a black belt hand washer, and the author of a book. Swipe right on your best self. Simple steps to a bolder life with fewer regrets. I've spent about the last 12 years delivering leadership development workshops, giving talks to organizations about improving our mental state to meet life's challenges, predominantly in the workplace more effectively. How can we collaborate with one another more effectively? Manage ourselves in the face of life's challenges. I've been doing that for about 12 years, but prior to that, I had a 20-year consulting consulting career with IBM predominantly, and I lived and worked in a multitude of cultures. So I spent a couple of years in Abu Dhabi in the Middle East, in the United Arab Emirates. I had 3 years in Munich, wonderful Munich. If there are any listeners with just a yen to check out the south of Germany, do it. I had an absolutely fabulous time there. I lived and worked in Scotland, in Edinburgh for a long period, and I've worked for the last, since the millennium actually, in Sydney, Australia. And what I found, Roy, was that it didn't really matter which culture I was in. And I can let you know that the cultures of Arabia and Germany are poles apart. I've also spent time in Beijing, actually delivering workshops and talking in Beijing. Very, very different cultures. However, it doesn't really matter where you are. There are extremely talented, intelligent, experienced people, leaders in each of those cultures, and I could watch them at work. And some of them, when the challenges were on, when the heat was really on, when the Qantas ticketing booking system had gone down, I can tell you there's a lot of phones ring when the booking system, the computer system that manages the airline tickets for Qantas, when it stops working, there's a lot of excitement in the office. When all those phones are ringing, there were some managers who could get the best out of themselves at that time and out of their teams. And yet there were other leaders when the heat was on, just as talented, just as intelligent, that to some degree or other began to lose it. And their anxiety infected others. And problems could take 5 times longer to resolve when people were unable to manage their minds. I was curious what made the difference. As I say, they were equally intelligent. What was making the difference between these different sets of managers? And I took a step back and I immersed myself, and it was a sheer indulgence, Roy. I immersed myself for a few years in the science of human performance. And I've got 2 master's degrees now in human behavior change and human performance, which is all about how can we manage our workplaces, but also manage our minds. Really importantly, how can we manage ourselves so that we can be more effective in reaching for more of what we want in life? How can we meet life's challenges more effectively? The ones we get that we didn't ask for, the reorganizations, the losing jobs, what else? Changing technology, the shifts that are happening at an increasing rate in the workplace, those challenges, but also the challenges that we do choose for ourselves. How can we help ourselves to meet the challenges that we want? Applying for new work, maybe building a new relationship. It could be an intimate relationship or a business relationship, starting a new business. I put it to your listeners that probably if they look back at the times that they're most proud of themselves in their entire lives, I I'm going to bet my bottom dollar. I've got it here. I'm going to bet my bottom dollar.
Aussie dollar or American dollar?
It's an Aussie dollar, Roy. And so it's not actually worth quite as much as the American, which is why I'm willing to risk it. I'm willing to risk my Aussie dollar. That actually, if you look back at the times that, let me ask you, Roy, you think of a time in your life when you look back and think, actually, I'm pretty proud of the way I showed up there. I'm so glad I took that step, or I made that decision, or I asked for that. I bet there was some courage involved. It was a challenge. You're probably not looking back and saying, you know what I'm most proud of? It was that time I lay on the beach, with a cold glass of something in my hand. I'm most proud of that day. I could feel the sun on my skin. No, you're probably most proud of a time you took a chance. You took a risk. You went for it in some sense. That required challenge. It required a challenge. It required courage. And each of us can actually develop our courage. It's not something that you've got in a fixed amount. We can develop our capacity to do what's meaningful, what's important, but at the same time is also personally challenging, such as speaking to audiences. And I know this is an area that you're particularly interested in. How can we help people to manage themselves so that they can step up, speak out, be heard, and connect with people? That's what I do now in my career. I share what I learned in those 2 master's degrees. I help people, predominantly in organizations, to step up and be bolder in their working lives.
Very, very interesting. And I think everybody can relate to, when you're on about Qantas, because we've all seen that. If you're working for a company, like I remember we used to have a guy, the boss, we used to call him Peter Panic, because when something went wrong, he just panicked. And my style was totally different. And I don't know, I meditate and everything. I can keep getting, but I noticed that. I didn't do, the studies that you've done, but I noticed straight away that if I can't keep my cool, if I start panicking, the people around panic and they're not efficient. And you just keep cool. You just find out, okay, what do we need to get done? Life is like that. There's hiccups, whether it's in your own personal or in business. There's nothing straight line. It's just, it's continuous. No matter how good life is going at the moment, you're going to get slapped in the morning and you won't expect it. But it's a case of how you react to it. And I found that I don't panic. The people around me don't panic, and we get better results.
Absolutely. Yep. And it is up to us. It's a choice. We've got a lot of control over how we choose to respond to challenge. And you're so right about life is going to be challenging. It's a certainty. It's a certainty. Things are going to go wrong, absolutely guaranteed. And the more you're willing to leave your comfort zone, the more challenges there will be. Now, there's a tendency, we've all got this woven into our DNA, to stay safe, avoid risk, avoid threat. It's just human nature to play it safe. But the good stuff in life is out there. It's on the other side of the comfort zone. We stagnate if we stay in here for too long, if we're too comfortable. So the more we can develop our capacity to step out and develop our capacity to tolerate small amounts of anxiety and stress, the more we can achieve, the more we can grow, the more we can learn, and the more we can connect to other people and become bigger versions of ourselves. It's really important.
And doing workshops, obviously a company, when they see that you're able to kind of offer that advice and kind of, I presume you can do workshops on that, trying to help people to overcome, how do you deal with it? Because sometimes even the people in the workshop starts panicking, or they're just trying to take control and everything. Have you a kind of technique for getting them to calm down, just taking a step back?
Facilitators to help people people in the audience, do you mean, or facilitators in front of the workshop?
If you're actually in the workshop. So, sometimes it could be a full team, and I presume a team leader as well. And you would spot, sometimes you can just spot, I can see he's the problem. Whereas you can see the rest are kind of getting it and going along.
Yes. Well, in my early days of facilitation, I would dread the difficult people, the people who would argue with you, who wouldn't collaborate. And then I discovered that actually these people can become your best allies, your best allies. So what I always do, if someone is a little bit adversarial or just a little bit disagreeable, the best thing to do with them is to acknowledge and validate whatever their concerns are. Hear them, really hear them. Hear what they're saying, repeat it back, and validate that their position is a reasonable one. I don't force people to accept anything that I'm sharing with them in my workshops. I say right up front now, look, I've got a variety of tools to offer you. It's a variety of techniques. I want you to choose for yourselves which ones are going to be most appropriate for you. I can't do that. I want you to decide. Take what's useful, discard the rest. So I give everyone permission now, right up front, to choose. So people don't feel obliged. They have to like or approve of everything I offer. That lowers the tension in the room. But if someone does begin to disagree, I'll just validate, acknowledge, hear them, and let them know that I appreciate their speaking out. This tends to soothe and calm them. It's worked so far.
Excellent. I've seen your like speaker's kit and breaking down with your keynotes and then your workshops. That's extremely impressive because I mean, I've interviewed, you know, even though I've about, I don't know, 98 or whatever up, you know, I've about 20 reserved. I haven't seen something that good. I think it's actually fantastic because a lot of time people say, I do this, I do keynote, I do workshops. You're telling exactly. And I'm assuming that it has helped you.
Yes, I'm spelling out clearly. People don't have to have a lengthy conversation with me. They might feel a bit awkward. Oh, do I really want to talk to him? It's there. It's there in the document. Crystal clear what I can offer you in terms of talks, workshops, and also longer training programs. I have a lot of fun running training programs, teaching people how to have courageous coaching conversations in the workplace. This skill of coaching people, asking them questions to help them to think things through for themselves, anyone can learn it. And people have such fun discovering how they can have coaching conversations with their work colleagues, but also with their family members, with people at home. I had someone attend just last week. They were on the second week of the coaching course, and I give them homework after I call it home practice, Roy, not homework. It's home practice.
Yeah. I don't want to go straight away. When I hear homework, I just reminds me of
exactly. Exactly. There's a slip there. I shouldn't have said that. I don't want to alarm any of your listeners. There's no homework, but there's home practice to develop the skills. And I said, look, could you have a conversation, have a coaching conversation with someone between now and the next time we meet? Have that conversation, practice the skills, see how you get on. And we came back to week 2, and one of the attendees said, look, my wife, who's not in the course, she's asking if she could just speak to the group. It was all being done virtual. Could she speak to the group? We said, oh, okay, bring her on. What's she got to say? And she sat down in front of us and said, look, when my husband, Pete, said he wanted to have a coaching conversation with me to help me sort out some work problem, I thought, what a complete waste of time. What on earth is Pete going to be able to say to help me? She said, I'm a music teacher at school. What does he know about music teaching at school? But I thought, I'll play along. I'll play along. So she said, he asked these questions. I can't remember quite what he said, but it was miraculous. Within 2 minutes, I had solved my long-running teaching problem of music at school. It was incredible. She said, I just want to let you all know what you're doing here and learning about is amazing. She said, thank you very much, and vanished. And it's just lovely, so lovely to see that. Everyone can learn these coaching skills very, very quickly. And what a lot of folk discover in workshops is the things I teach, they're not really just about work. I tell the people who are paying for the courses that it's all about work. It's not quite true. These skills people learn, you can use them at home as well. You can have better conversations. We can all have better conversations in the workplace and at home. So that's what I do.
I've seen that with your workshops, you give kind of like, whether it's virtual and you say you prefer in person, and you give kind of like, can be, like 2.5 hours, I don't know, is it for 3 or 4 days, and then half days and a full day. Well, how do you actually break it down? I mean, obviously you're shortening it down, but your structure when you are physically there, because I know a virtual is a bit different, but when you're physically...
Yes. Yeah, when I'm physically there, it really is up to the client, because sometimes they can't release their people for a full day's workshop. That's just not possible because of resourcing. So that's why I say to them, look, guys, if you can spare your people for 2 hours, great. Half a day, great. A full day, wonderful. But when my preference is to have repeated exposures over periods of time. So it might be one day, once a week, for 3 weeks. So we give them things to do at the end of day 1, and I'll see you on day 8. And we come back and say, how did you go? What happened? What worked? What didn't work so well? So a lot of them are spread out over 3 weeks, and that works well. But look, as I say, sometimes people can only spare half a day. And if that's the case, we might do 5 weeks, 5 weeks of half-day workshops. So it's all very modular, and it's all changed depending on the customer's needs and their availability.
I've seen you've landed some very big clients, IBM, Colgate, loads of them. So people aspire to get that. So, well, I mean, you've worked for and moved around the world. But what's your advice for people that are hoping to land a big boy?
Oh, perseverance. This is a long game. And it's very tempting when you start off to imagine that success is going to come quickly, and it happens over time. There are no overnight successes. There are only overnights successes. There are overnights, and I don't mean 5 or 6 nights. I mean 1,000 nights, maybe 1,500 nights. It's a long game, and I'd say keep raising your profile. It takes time for people to learn who you are. So I'm quite well known down in the Australian context, but that took time. Building a brand, becoming known and trusted, it took a long time, a lot of repeated exposures. And the other thing is, I'd say an awful lot of it comes through people that you know. The bulk of my work actually doesn't come through my very expensive website, which I would have hoped just by virtue of having it would suddenly generate huge amounts of business. No, it actually comes through people recommending me to others. Oh, I saw that, Eric. No, that was good. Got a lot of value. That was it was entertaining, but it was also informative. We learned a lot of really helpful techniques, which we've applied in the workplace. So it will come through word of mouth. So people need to experience you in order to recommend you. So I'd say to your listeners, do whatever you can to be seen and be heard. Now, that might mean running free webinars online. It might mean giving free talks initially online or in person. But people need to witness you, need to experience you. And you don't need to be good to begin with. You will get good by practicing. So the important thing is to develop your competency and give yourself time to get better and to become known. These things take time. No one goes from 0 to 100 immediately. But you need to give yourself permission to get better over time. There's a wonderful expression from Alain de Botton. Do you ever listen to Alain de Botton on YouTube, Roy?
No.
Okay, a fabulous speaker. He set up an organization called the School of Life. And he says a lot of people suffer from what he calls premature perfectionism. Premature perfectionism. And they just want to be awesome now. They want to be really, really good. And he says, look, actually, you should be really, really good. I want you to aspire to be really, really good over time, but not today. not today. So be perfectionistic over the longer term. Yeah, take time, but do have high standards. Good, but you can't do it today.
Love it, because not everybody says that, and I think that's actually the secret sauce there. And you mentioned about the website, like a lot of people, they think they create the website and then they do the Google AdWords or whatever. But what it is good, because you have an extremely professional website, is when that person gives a recommendation to you, they will check out your website. So it's not wasted value. It's like they go, oh, this guy is professional. I like what this guy is doing.
Yeah, you're spot on there. You do need to have, because people want to check you out. They'll say, okay, Frank says Eric's worth listening to. Frank says he can give really good talks, great workshops, good trainings. Let's look that Eric up, and people will look you up. And when whatever they see needs to drip professionalism, if that's the space that you're working in. So yeah, whether it's just a LinkedIn profile, and sometimes that's enough, but make it shine. If that's your web presence, we all need to have a web presence of some sort. It could be a Facebook business page, a LinkedIn business page, or your own website, whatever it is. Make sure that when people go to have a little look, check you out, they experience you as whatever you want. In my domain, it's as someone who is professional, who has a lot of value to add organizations, because that's the space that I work in. So think about the experience that you want your potential purchasers to have. What's the experience that they should have? And then craft a web presence which will support that presence and that experience.
You were mentioning about kind of, you don't start off as the top of the top. Did you request feedback? How did you actually analyze how you were performing? Because some people, did you record it, or did you actually have questionnaires? How did you actually, kind of put a point? Yeah, that wasn't great. I need to improve on this. What was your tricks for doing that?
Yes, well, I'm a student of the art of speaking. So I'm continually learning through multiple avenues to get better. One of them was I've been on a number of retreats with a public speaker to develop my craft, and we get feedback there. So we will give talks to a group of other experienced speakers, sort of an expert group, and we give one another feedback. We get immediate feedback and a chance to repractice. Okay, let me do that again. Yeah, thanks very much. So I've invested quite a lot in my craft, and I've got feedback from experts in the field. But in addition, I part of what I train is managing your ego. So that's part of what I train, is managing your mind when challenged. One of the upsides of that is that I can speak to people after I've given a talk and say, so can I have some honest feedback as to what worked well, and when there were times when perhaps I could have done something a little bit differently. And when you ask for feedback like that, people are much more willing to give you honest feedback. And I love it. I love hearing people say, oh, well, that story went on a little bit, perhaps, or you could have slowed down a little. Or to begin with, when I first started speaking, it was, we could do with more stories, please, Eric. More stories. We loved it when you spoke about the time when you planted broccoli. And I'm thinking, oh, but that was a ridiculous story. There's very little value. So no, we love that. So I have to defer to the audience. It's not about what we like. Defer to your audience. Believe them. Believe them. Now, just because one person does like or didn't like something, that's not enough, because there'll always be someone who didn't like one quality, one aspect of how you delivered it. So you need to get multiple feedbacks. But now and again, you'll get a theme. 2 or 3 people will echo a sentiment about something that they, or whatever it is, whatever they loved or whatever they didn't love as much. Believe them and change.
I'm assuming, when you've got these different clients that they're calling you back at times, do you track what you had discussed, the stories you said, just in case, like sometimes you go back and there's like 50% of the people were there before, so you're not doing a complete repeat, or is it something?
No, I always ask that question. Yes. So look, I saw it. We spoke last year. I gave that talk on, let's say it was resilience and let's say a well-being mindset, or we may have been talking about high quality connections at work. And I say, okay, you've asked me to come back. Yeah. And just as you said there, Roy, I'll be saying, so is this the same people I spoke to last year? Do they all know me? Have they been exposed to that content? Or is this a fresh group? Is this a different part of your organization? Yeah, really important to know if where the overlap is. Because I don't ever want to be repeating content to individuals. It's always got to be fresh. And that's, I've got plenty of material, so it's not a big deal. But yes, I want to know who I'm talking to. And I also want to know what's happening now for these people right now. What's going on in your organization? What are people talking about? What's on their mind? What's front of mind? Because sometimes there are reorgs happening. There are changes taking place, perhaps in legislation, or maybe they're working from home. I want to hear about what's current, and then I can shape my talk so that it's relevant as possible to the circumstances and the current challenges that people are facing, so that they understand that I'm talking to them, that what I'm saying is relevant to them.
Very good. And like you've done keynotes as well, so how, just when they're not virtual as well, I suppose, because virtual is a total different animal. How do you prepare yourself for the keynote?
How do I prepare myself for a keynote? Well, I master the content. I master my content. I have to know my content inside out. So I have never referred to notes in a keynote. Also, I never do that in a workshop either. I never look at paper. I maintain eye contact with the people I am talking to, never look away. So the preparation is one in completely mastering the content. I practice alone at home so that I know how long things take, and I time everything. So I know just how long different sections will take. Everything always seems to take longer. I've learned through experience that nothing ever takes the time that you do during practice. It actually takes longer. And a big part of that is laughs, because there is laughter. You tell something and people are, and you've got to wait. And you're thinking, no, hang on, I didn't allow for this. And so I do now allow for that. It will take much like it'd be 10 seconds worth of laughter. You don't interrupt people while they're laughing. The last part you do, you keep going, but not the first part. So a lot of practice at home. So it's eloquent, it flows, it's natural. I time it all. I've shaped what I'm talking for the audience in particular, so I know what their current sore points are. I will also run through the content, the high level ideas with the organizers. So I'll make it very clear. Say, look, I'm thinking about constructing this. We're going to be talking about this first, then we'll move on to that, then we'll talk about this. Is that going to work with your particular group in the day? Because often these are whole day events. It could be a conference, some sort of business kickoff, and they know about the other speakers in the day. And so I will check with them. I'm thinking about architecting the talk in this particular manner with these 5 building blocks. Is that going to work? Is this appropriate for your people? Or is there something that perhaps I should drop? Let me know. So I get their approval up front. I know that there won't be, it prevents me from talking about something that somebody else is going to talk about later on, or saying something that perhaps could be a sore point because of something that's happening in the organization right now. So I share as much as I can with the organizers about the talk. I think that's broadly it for the preparation. A lot of practice, a lot of shaping of the content, I know how long things are going to take. Always finish on time, exactly on time. There is no overrunning. That's unprofessional. Never look at notes. Never look down. Maintain the eye contact. And you're maintaining the eye contact in this conversation here, Roy. And I'm imagining you actually have a teleprompter. Do you have a teleprompter in front of you? Am I just underneath your webcam? Have you got me right underneath your camera?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. Good job.
Because what I done is I squeezed up, because before I used to be looking to the left, and then I realized, because people have said put a picture on the top. Like I don't feel comfortable, because I like looking at you when I'm talking to you, because I'm engaging with you.
Yeah. So I'm giving a half-hour webinar on how to elevate your online presentations on I think July the 19th. Sydney time. And in that half-hour talk, I will be talking about the importance of eye contact. Absolutely vital. There's a reason that dogs are the most popular animal. They have such a strong connection with humans. It's that they're the only animal that holds eye contact with a human. Your gerbils won't do it, Roy. A cat will disdainfully glance at you before shaking its head and then looking away. But a dog, dogs make eye contact and they connect. And we need to do that too. As speakers, when we're addressing an audience, we need to look. Maybe we're looking at the audience in groups of 6. We're breaking the room up into 6 parts, and we're looking at a sixth of the room. No one must feel neglected. We've got to make sure everyone feels that we are talking to them. So the eye contact is key.
Excellent. So I know I've read your book, really good. What made you write the book?
Oh, thanks very much. Well, if I'm blunt with you, Roy, something, and I feel I can be blunt. If you're in this game of being a speaker, it helps to be recognized as an authority on the topic that you're speaking about. And you can have all the expertise in the world, but people may not recognize that. You need to give them some evidence that you are, you know your topic, that you're someone worth listening to in that field. Now, you can get that through word of mouth. That's really helpful. But I wrote a book. Primarily, my first reason was to have this documented evidence of my authority. So I have, as you know, you've read the book, I've pulled together some of the biggest ideas in self-management, self-leadership, and put them into a very, very accessible form in the book. I want people, my audiences, to know, see, if they read the book, they'll recognize, Eric can get to the point quickly. This is a book of very little fluff. There's too many books out there today which are full of bubble wrap words. There is a core idea in the middle of the book, but you will have to wade. You'll have to pop through an awful lot of surplus words before you can bury down to the core idea. And then you've got to work your way out. I didn't want to do that. I like to get to the point, and I do this in my talks too. So the book is a demonstration of my ability to communicate effectively and to share big ideas in a very accessible way. And I talk about a lot of the things that are in my book, of course, in my keynotes. So the book is a demonstration of my competence in my field. Now, that was my primary reason for writing the book. Actually, what I hadn't expected, and it's such a bonus, when you write a book, you are compelled to organize your own thinking. Writing a book demands that you really structure your own thinking, that you organize your ideas in a congruent manner. So I benefited hugely by thinking about, how do I express these ideas in a meaningful sequence? And you'll know the book steps through the 3 human predicaments that hold us back from being bold. We start with the problem. And I had to really think through, what are those in their fullest? What are those 3 problems? And then I moved on to, okay, what are the strategies that we can employ? And what is the best way that I can talk about those most effectively? So writing the book really helped me to clarify, to crystallize for myself my own thinking. Really, really helpful. And my speaking is far more confident and effective as a consequence of having written the book. So I'm seen as on authority, but in addition, I genuinely do know my subject even better than I did before.
Excellent. And like, there's a few topics I just like to, before we finish up on the book, because I think they're kind of very relevant in these funny times. Like, we're living in strange times. I've got friends in Australia, so I know now you're going through this lockdown. You were kind of getting away with it for a while, so now you're going through this strange times. One is the gratitude. I'd like you to just talk a bit on the gratitude, because I think, because people are looking at what they've lost instead of what they can appreciate.
Yes. So I'm glad thank you for giving me an opportunity to talk about this, because I think this is relevant to all of us, especially at this time, but to all of us. And it gets lip service. People will tell you, oh, you've got to smell the roses in life, stop and smell the roses. However, we need to do more than that. We live in a world in which the media and the constant advertising tells us that you are not enough as you are. So we get all of these adverts, billboards showing us that currently they helpfully inform us that we are not as popular as we could be with the right fragrance. We are not as happy as we could be. We're not as successful. We're not as good looking as we could be. So this is how advertising works. It creates a sense of lack, of something missing. And good news, they have the fragrance that will make you popular and attractive, irresistible even with the right fragrance. You could be irresistible to other people. You could baffle your friends. Sorry, baffle your enemies, isn't it? And impress your friends. So we get a lot of lies from advertising, but unfortunately, it undermines our sense of well-being. This constant messaging that we are not enough. Now, you and I know, and all of your intelligent listeners and viewers, they know how advertising works. We understand that they're trying to sell us something, and we know it's a bit of nonsense. However, there's a part of us is always paying attention to that advertising and buys into it. A part of us, not all of us, but a part of us is undermined. The antidote to being told continually that you're not enough, not successful enough, not popular enough, not attractive enough, not qualified enough, whatever it is. The antidote to a sense of lack is to intentionally, as you were saying earlier, to turn your attention to what you do have, to appreciate what you do have in your life. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, 2,000 years ago, said, oh, you'd like to be happy? Learn to want what you already have. Now, when we turn our attention to the stuff that we've taken for granted in life, and there's a lot of good things in life that we have. We live in an age of miracles. I'm talking to you, Roy. You're in Poland. I'm in Australia. We're talking in real time. It's a miracle. I was talking to somebody else earlier today. He said, you know what another miracle is? He said, microwaves. It's impossible. You put food in a box, you press a button, it's hot in a minute. It's hot food in a minute. They're magical boxes. We live in a way that emperors of just a few hundred years ago could only dream of. So the most powerful, successful, top of the game people a few hundred years ago could not dream of hot and cold running water, hot showers on a whim, strawberries every month of the year. We live like kings, but we become used to it. We get used to it. It seems normal. I'd like to share a quick, I call it the ultimate gratitude exercise, if I may, Roy, with your listeners. Yeah. Fantastic. This is what I found to be the most potent exercise for accelerating a sense of gratitude and appreciation and awe all at once. And it's this. The reality is, at some point, you and I will do everything for the last time. Everything. There was a point in my past when I used a rotary phone. Do you remember those? You had the dial, you put your finger in the hole. And I don't know when it was, but at some point I used that for the last time. And I haven't done it since. This goes for everything. There are streets we walk down. At some point, you will walk down that street for the last time. There are streets you've already walked down for the last time. There are restaurants that you've eaten in, perhaps in your home where you are now, home city, or in other countries that you will never visit again. You've actually done it for the last time. But we didn't know it. We didn't know it at the time. As I say, ultimately, we'll do everything for the last time. So this exercise is this. It's to have a thought experiment. It's just a little game, just twice a day. That's all, just twice a day. When you're doing something, and it could be anything, imagine you're doing it for the last time. Not because you're dying later on in the day, but just because there's some circumstance has arisen. So let's say you're going to have a coffee. Next time you have a coffee, Roy, have that coffee as though it's the last coffee you will ever have. For some reason, perhaps the Arabica bean harvest is going to crash. You don't need to worry about the why. You're just playing a game. Let's imagine this coffee was the last coffee. If you were going to drink the last coffee, Roy, that you'd ever have in your entire life, and if you don't like coffee, substitute tea. I want you to put in a drink that you do drink. What kind of attention would you give the last coffee? Tell me.
You would savor every sip.
Oh,
It would be orgasm of the mouth.
It would. Yeah, hopefully just the mouth. But yeah, the fragrance. Oh, you'd feel like the warmth. You'd rush it. It's the last one. We're halfway through. Oh, there's only half to go. Imagine next time you have a bar of chocolate. Imagine it's the last chocolate bar. Next time you have some Chinese food. Next time you see a dog wagging its tail. Imagine it's the last dog you'll ever see. When we give our attention to experiences in that fashion, we are suddenly, as you said there, we savor intensely. We are massively present. We bring all of our presence to that moment. And it can really dial up a sense of gratitude and awe. And we can do that with partners too. Next time you're with a friend or a partner or a child, imagine this is actually going to be the last time that you're with them. And I tell you, it just puts gratitude on steroids.
And I think a lot of people have actually experienced it, because I've experienced that. I know when I went back to Ireland, and you go out for a drink with somebody and you come back and next day die. And it's like, you never thought of that. So I think that's an unbelievable thought process that you've said. Everything you do, think it's going to be the last time, because that you ooze gratitude then.
Yeah.
And I believe what you attract, what you appreciate, you attract. You just keep doing it that way, all positive things, instead of the opposite, being listening to the news and stuff like that with the negative, because it's the exact same. If you start playing that game with the negative and you start having the negative conversations, you start attracting negative things. So I think everybody should replay what you've just said, listen to it and apply it in their life, because they will be extremely happy.
Yes. Yeah, it is. It's a path to happiness. And once or twice in my life, people have said, but hang on, Eric, if I'm grateful for what I've got, will that sap my eagerness and my energy to reach for more? Will I become satisfied? And this research says, no, you will still, it's possible to be grateful for what you have in life. And from that strong foundation where there's no neediness, where you're not feeling needy, but to actually choose to reach for more from a strong, satisfied foundation. It does not diminish motivation or drive. It actually puts you in a stronger position. And the final thing I'd say is, by the time, let's say you are aspiring to build a business or a career or a relationship, and you spend years and years and years getting there. By the time it all comes to fruition, you want to have the kind of mind that is trained in enjoying the fruits of your success. And if you spend a lifetime not actually savoring, enjoying, it's possible to get everything you want, but actually have a mind that has forgotten how to really appreciate and savor. So why not start practicing enjoying what you already have now? That you can enjoy the journey towards creating what you want in your life. And when you get there, you will have trained those neural pathways so that you can enjoy the fruits of your efforts when you get there all the more.
Excellent. Love it. And finally, because I wanted to cover this as well, you mentioned about the microwaves. That's something that I would encourage people, bring it to the recycling center because it actually destroys the good. But you've got another chapter on good food, good mood foods, which I think is in connection to what you've just discussed, because sometimes if you're eating stuff with aspartame and too much sugar and everything, you get lethargic and you're not just focused and everything. So you might just share that with us.
Yes. So when people come to me and say, Eric, I'd like help to build my mind. I want to build my mindset. I want to be more effective at work. I say, great, look, I absolutely will share some strategies, some hacks to build a positive mindset. But before we do that, there are some foundations to take care of. Before we get clever with the psycho stuff, and I love that psycho stuff, but before we do that, we've got to attend to something which is even more important. And what's more important is having a physiology that supports living courageously and thinking well. We've got to attend to the body. And one of the things that's absolutely important for being bold in life, for being courageous, for whether it's stepping up on stage or asking somebody out or starting a new business, one of the things that we can do for ourselves, and it matters, is how do we nourish ourselves? How do we fuel ourselves? And there's two key things we need to pay attention to. One is the carbs and the sugar that we eat. We want to avoid having these peaks and troughs. If you have, and I adore bars of chocolate. I do adore, not all of them. I was going to mention one name, but no, I pretty much love them all. But the problem is we get this tsunami of sugar. And when the body sees all that sugar, it actually works really hard to get it out of the bloodstream. Sugar in high concentrations is toxic in your body. And we should never be able to get quite as much sugar as there is in one marathon bar, or Snickers, as I think they call it now. So the body works really hard. And the problem is, if you have a lot of sugar, we then have this dip. The body strips out the sugar and it overcompensates. Then our mood is depressed and low, and we feel, oh, I need a coffee, I need something else to eat. If we're going to sustain courageous work, we need a steady level of energy. We need to aim for steady levels of energy. That's the first thing. But the other thing is, your mood and my mood is massively impacted by something else. And I shouldn't say something, it's more like some things. Because it turns out that 50% of all the living cells in your body, Roy, and in mine, they're not human. You are 50% non-human. You look pretty human from here. That's Zoom for you. It's a good filter you've got.
It's a mask I'm wearing.
It's a look, but you're 50% not human. And what I mean by this is, inside our gut, we're all kind of across this nowadays, it turns out we've got good bacteria and bad bacteria. It's not just bacteria, it's fungi, it's viruses, and it's other tiny little microbes. We've got stuff that lives in our gut, and it's natural, it's normal, and it's actually essential. We need it. But it's actually half of all the living cells in your body. They're in the gut. And the researchers have discovered, really in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of research into this, much more evidence. It turns out that the particular combinations of bugs in our gut, the combinations determines to a significant extent our mood. This is amazing. The bugs that live inside, the microbes that live inside our gut, they don't have brains. They don't have brains, but they release neurotransmitters. They actually release chemicals that send messages to brains. whose brain could they possibly be creating these neurochemicals for? It's ours. It's ours. The stuff that's inside us actually sends messages through the gut wall, up the vagus nerve to the brain, and it affects our mood. When we eat a lot of sugar, a lot of carbs, the diversity that's inside our gut, it collapses. It collapses down to just a few different bugs. And that's a really bad thing, because when we get very, very few bugs that adore sugar, they just love sugar, when we feed them, those are the bugs that release chemicals, neurochemicals up to the brain that make us feel anxious and depressed. They lower our mood, anxious and depressed. When instead we feed ourselves and our gut bacteria with vegetables. It's all the boring stuff, I'm afraid, but it's lots of different colored vegetables. Fiber. The fiber is really important. When we put a lot of fiber and vegetables in our gut, that expands the diversity of the kind of good bacteria that actually send up feel-good messages, that make us feel confident, that make us feel positive, that give us a sense of possibility. Our mood is influenced to an astonishing degree by what lives in our gut. So if you'd like to have a positive frame of mind for your business, you'd like to feel more confidence to step up on stage and speak to large audiences, one of the things you need to do is feed yourself with good mood food. Yeah, really important. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to share that with
I
your
don't know
listeners.
the way of it there, but I've read a book on the gut, and what you said, yeah, it's like I concur. And like things like antibiotics, that's why you should, like, because some doctors throw out antibiotics. Like you go in there, I've got such and such, they don't even ask you, it's antibiotic. That kills a load of the good gut bacteria. So you should use natural cures for actually, healing yourself when you're not feeling the May waste. But like, definitely, like, people should research that. I would encourage people to even read, obviously, your book, but they should read a gut book as well, because at the end of the day, like, people talk about the head, they talk about the heart, they don't talk about is that where intuition is coming from because of that? Who knows? But I definitely, yeah. And I love the way that you wrote the book, to be honest with you, because, you've broken it down into different sections. It's not, like, as you said, there's no fluff in it. You just go straight to the point. And I love that kind of book, to be honest with you, because it's one that you don't want to put down. And that's how I know it's an enjoyable book, because I didn't want to put it down and I read it fast. And so I encourage people. So how can people get in contact with you, Eric?
Well, you can look at my expensive website. Yeah, have a look at that. And there's a contact form on the website, but also you can download the start of the book. You can download the start of the book from the website. And I'd say the very beginning of the book is the acknowledgements. I actually begin the story in the acknowledgements. I didn't want to wait for the introduction. I begin in the acknowledgements. If people download that, I'd say, look, you know what? You don't have to read the first 40 pages, which you can download for free. Just read the first page, and you'll know if my writing style appeals and resonates for you. You'll know within one page. That's all you need to do. But if people would like to stay in touch, if they'd like to attend my free webinars that I run, the best way to do it is to connect with me on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook as well, but I spend more of my time on LinkedIn. My handle is at ericwinters.com.au, or you could just search for Eric Winters and look for a face like this and connect. I'd be very happy to connect to anyone who's interested in this stuff, in this topic of our minds and being courageous, and also the topic of speaking. I am really interested in how we can all get better at delivering messages, at sharing what we know, and being more like ourselves. Not a persona with a mask, but showing up more like sharing our personality. Audiences like experiencing real people. And I put a lot of work into trying to show up more like myself. It's easier, Roy, isn't it? If you just show up as yourself, right? It's a lot less work.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah. Yeah. And people relate to that. They don't want soup. This is a reassuring message, perhaps, for some of your listeners and your viewers. They don't need perfectionism. They don't need perfect deliveries. They like real, often they like talking to real people or having real people share information with them. And there, it takes time, actually, bizarrely, to show up more like yourself in front of an audience. It's something to practice, being more real, being a little bit vulnerable, a little bit of personal disclosure, not too much, but a little bit of personal disclosure to let people know, actually, I'm just like you. We're all in this same human boat, Roy. And that's it's not a bad message to weave into many talks. We're all in this together.
Absolutely. Listen, Eric, thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I put all the links on the description of both the video and the audio. Thank you very much.
Most welcome. Thank you so much for having me on, Roy.
So that's all for the Speaking Podcast. You'll find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. We're on BitChute, we're on YouTube. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, share with your friends, give us a 5-star review. Until next week, take care.